Hey everyone, have you ever wondered how to become a data engineer that companies love to hire? Let's find it out. As you may know, data engineers are in a very high demand, so I thought of creating this video to help you guys, right? So this video will be beneficial if you are totally new into job area. Hey everyone, have you ever wondered how to become a data engineer that companies love to hire? Let's find it out. As you may know, data engineers are in a very high demand, so I thought of creating this video to help you guys, right? So this video will be beneficial if you are totally a new job seeker. For example, students fresh out of the college or first time, you are entering the job market. Or let's say if you are working on different fields and you want to switch your job into data engineer field, right? And if you are working in a non-IT field and if you want to switch from a non-IT to IT, and also if you are switching the technology or tools from a legacy standpoint. Let's say you may be working on a different tool set, some other ETL tool or some other legacy tools which you wanted to migrate and switch on to the newer technologies in the data engineering. So in on all of these scenarios, this video is going to be super helpful. So let's dig a little deeper into understanding what are some of the areas that data engineers should really focus on and get their career stronger. All right. So here is a simple chart that I have created for you guys to understand better. See, whenever it comes to career in a data engineer, there are five crucial aspects, right? In a very crucial aspects is the first one is mastering the ETL part, right? You have to understand what the ETL is, what are some of the areas that you have to understand and learn and then experiment all of that. And once you are thorough with the ETL part, you will have to understand some of the data standpoints as well, right? There may be concepts on data warehouse, data mart, data lake, all of that. And once you are clear on the mastering data side, you will have to understand some of the administration part also, right? Just the development or understanding analysis is not sufficient. You also need to have some of the administration skills as well, right? So you need to understand the administration part also. And then comes the documentation part, right? They are very crucial in order to get real-time project experience. So that is very crucial to get into the documentation part, certification, some of the process related documentation such as Agile, all of that. And in order to prepare your interviews, you will have to have the most frequently asked questions, right? So these are the five crucial areas. Now let's dig deeper into each of these areas to understand what exactly you need to be learning and you need to be focusing on to become a data engineer. Okay, so let me expand this. So when it comes to ETL part, right, mastering ETL are on a very high level, it is distributed into four different buckets, right? The first thing is you will have to be very strong in the ETL concepts, right? It can be any ETL scenarios or concepts. For example, what are incremental loads, what are historical loads, how the data is ingested, how the data is transformed, all of that, right? So that you have to be very having that strong foundation. Without that foundation, you take any tools or technologies or programming language, it's not going to be really helpful. So we have to focus on ETL concepts first, and then we'll also have to work through the different scenarios, right? So this is the first topic, and then the second topic would be you will have to strengthen your skills primarily on Python part. Python or PySpark, you will have to be really strong at it. So the reason why I say this is there are multiple tools that are available in the market. You can directly learn those and then implement and then get to it. However, with the recent trend, there's a lot of focus on Python and a PySpark based ETL, right? So you'll have to be focusing on getting good base on it. It doesn't necessarily be very strong and very deep into Python. Maybe a combination of one ETL tool, for example, Talend. if you have the talent ETL tool experience, and a bit of Python and a PySpark would be sufficient, because getting into this deeper of Python and PySpark would be really difficult if you are not very much into programming or logical thinking, or applying data structures and algorithms. If you are not very familiar there, you will have to have your primary ETL tool, and then as a secondary you should also scale up on Python or PySpark. Right, when it comes to this area, you will have to get into a bit of basic Python programmings. You will have to be familiar with the loopings, and a lot of areas on Python. And then you will have to strengthen your skills on Python pandas. Right, this is where you will have your data frames to work with, database or a file, or whether it is a XML, JSON, or any different type file types. Basically, you will get the data from a external source into data frames, and then you further apply the transformation, and then you take care of the ETL part, right? So you will have to be familiar working with the different varieties of databases, right? Some of the relational databases, or some of the columnar, or anything cloud related databases, and so on and so forth, right? And also you will have to take up some projects. So this real-time projects will give you exposure on most of the day-to-day real-time exposure on what type of typical task would come in a real-time project. How do we handle it? How do we work with the APIs? How do we work with external object storage like S3 or FTP or any other external systems, right? It should also be having a project which includes combination of all of these, combination of APIs, S3, FTP, databases. So these should be our primary focus on project related learnings. So once you are familiar with Python and the pandas and other areas on the real-time projects, you should also have stronger foundation on one of the cloud technologies. You can pick AWS, Azure, or even Google Cloud. The only problem with the Google Cloud nowadays is there's not a lot of not a lot of requirements come in real-time data engineering, because AWS and Azure has taken a lot of market share, right? So it is better if we focus on AWS or Azure part. So inside the Azure part, I mean AWS cloud, you may have to go through some of the basic services like S3, IAM roles, and how do we configure the firewalls, security groups, and all of that. And then you can directly jump onto the database part, right? So when I say database, it is mostly RDS database or Athena, right? Athena is nothing but a log aggregation, and RDS contains databases, relational databases like MySQL, Postgres, SQL Server, or Oracle, right? So these are some of the RDS that are available in the AWS cloud. So similarly, for analytical databases, for typical data warehousing, you have your Redshift, right? So when it comes to Redshift, you will have to have proper read and write operations on Redshift, and you should be familiar on incrementals. You should be familiar on applying lookups, or writing a stored procedure that does a lookup, right? So you should also be focusing on Redshift or stored procedure, because nowadays there is a lot of focus on ELT approaches, right? Typical ETL is used for ETL. However, nowadays the focus is more on the ELT approach. So we should be primarily focusing on Redshift stored procedures also. And then once you are familiar with Redshift, you should also pay attention to the lambdas and glues. So lambdas are nothing but you know um, Lambdas are nothing but an event-based trigger, which can be used for a smaller set of tasks, like moving a file from source to target, or let's say archiving the file, or triggering some email, or let's say zipping the file, or something like that, right? It's a typical smaller set of utility that does on variety of file system, or it can even trigger some of the DynamoDB, or it can trigger some of the stored procedures on any of the RDS or Redshift, right? And Glue is a ETL service which is available in the AWS environment. So you need to be very familiar on this Lambda and then the glues, right? You have to always go through basics, and then also you have to use Python in your Lambda code, and you can even write your PySpark and run it via Glue, right? So you have two options here. If you are taking Python PySpark, you can directly submit your PySpark into standalone cluster or any remote cluster. So this is very generic way of doing the ETL. Whereas if you are using Glue, you will have to write your PySpark and then execute it via Glue. Okay. So these days there's a lot of focus on getting these things done via AWS. So similarly, Azure also has Synapse, which is a data warehousing solution, and it has SQL database for RDS applications, right? And there are many other blob storage, and then there are virtual machines. They are equal to EC2 instances. There are functions which are nothing but lambdas. So there's a lot of services which are primarily essential for a data engineer. You don't have to go through all those 100 services in Azure or AWS, but you have to at least go through the ones that are important for a data engineer standpoint, right? So these are some of the areas I have also covered, except the Python part I have covered in my course. You can check it out, courses.talentpro.com. So that's where I have got these courses clubbed all together and made a bundle, right? In one single bundle you will be getting all of these areas, not just the ETL part, also you will get the data part, administration, documentation, and then the interview FAQs also, right? So you can check it out. All right, so moving on. So the next area is our mastering data. So when it comes to mastering data, it is also a part of data warehouse or a data mart, right? So and also data lakes. So these terms are heavily used, and most of the ETL or data engineering projects will have one of these as a target, or it could be a direct flat storage set of tables where you can load the data and then run your dashboard refresh and reporting on top of it. But most of the areas will have data lakes or data warehouse or data marts or a simple databases, right? So these areas are also covered in my course. And then moving on to SQL part. See, we should also be familiar on the database concepts. We have to understand some of the basic SQL. How do we write the joins, left join, right join, and how do we work with full outer join, all of that. And you should also pay attention to work on your aggregations. Aggregations are of two types, direct aggregation and using window functions as well, right? So those are really important. And then there's since there is a lot of focus on ELT approach, you should also be familiar on the stored procedures as well. So without the stored procedure, you will not be able to apply any of the ELT logic, right? So you have to be strengthening your skills on SQL, data warehousing, data mart, and data lake. And of course, you need to know what are the differences between data warehouse and data lake. What's the advantage? What's the disadvantage? How can we, tune a particular scenario or design? How do we design data warehouse? So those aspects are covered in my course. And moving on, the administration. The reason I want you guys to be familiar is a developer will also have to play multiple roles these days. So they are also expected to perform some of the administration tasks, at least that are related to some tool set, right? It need not be complete administration of servers, but definitely an administration of a particular tool. So in our case, I have covered TAC, which is a Talent Administration Center, and the TMC, Talent Management Console, and there were multiple miscellaneous topics. I'm sorry. So you have to have familiarity with the older TAC. For example, some of the admin activities, configuration standpoint, and there are like creating the jobs and tasks. How do we execute it? How do we configure it? All of that, which is done in the TAC environment, right? TAC is a older TAC, Talent Administration Center, and the newer ones is the TMC. So TMC is nothing but Talent Management Console. So there also you have multiple areas of administration. So we will start with something called as overview, understand how it works and know the architecture, and what are some of the regular or a day-to-day developer tasks that we do, like creation of the plans, tasks, and executing it, scheduling it. So all of these are covered, using a hands-on, using the enterprise version of the Talent TMC. Everything is covered. And similarly, there are other miscellaneous topics under the administration part, like how do we install it, how do we configure the server, how do we know the database tables behind it, metadata tables. There are many other areas you should be very familiar on administration part. And moving on, the documentation part. Um, so here, see, in order to gain any real-time project experience, you need to have that documentation in place. If you don't have the proper documentation and then the templates, you will never understand how the projects are executed in a real-time scenarios, right? In a real-time enterprise setup. So these two are the very crucial factors, and there are like 10 or 15 different documentation that I have provided. So you may have to get those complete exposure. And then the certification part. See, this is the area which most of the people neglect, but ended up having a challenge on top of it, right? So if you want to excel and clear your interviews, so it is always preferred that you can take up the certification, external certification. I have provided like 150 plus interview questions, so you can go through those and also prepare additional items from user guide and admin guides, and then it would be better, because these days it's very hard to find um, resource with multiple factors, like one who knows ETL data warehouse, database side and administration side, and then the documentation and all of that. It's very difficult to find. And if you are one such candidate out of 100 other candidates, so your priority will increase and it is easier to get a project and go through that selection process, right? So these are very crucial when it comes to documentation part. And then we have to understand the agile way of executing project also, right? We have to understand what are scrum, what are kanban mode. So these two are different modes of project management. So agile in general means that we should be able to take up smaller tasks and then deliver it as a smaller task, as a fully working unit, right? So there are two aspects. One is scrum. Scrum is a period of 1 or 2 weeks. That's where you will take up some task and then you complete it, and that's how you will work on the entire project in a smaller tasks. Similarly, in kanban mode there is no fixed sprint as such. Kanban mode always works in the pipeline mode. Whenever you work in a support project, right? Today you may have like 5 tickets and tomorrow maybe zeros, and the day after you may have like 3 tickets. So those setup scenarios would be helpful in kanban mode, right? So that is something we will have to be very clear and understand, um, before we get into this data engineer. So of course this agile part is very common, but we should be knowing like what exactly how it works, what are some of the terminologies, how it is different from a waterfall, what are the comparisons, and what's the advantage. All of that is discussed in my course, so that is really good to have skill. And then final section is our interview FAQs. So in order to crack the interviews, you need to have exposure on multiple areas, right? You need to have exposure on your talent, tool related Q&A, and then ETL generic concepts and scenarios. And there may be like a lot of questions on data warehousing, data lake, data mart, or hybrid data warehouse, those type of Q&A. And you need to have one stronger cloud experience and FAQs. For example, AWS, which is predominantly used. If you know one cloud technologies, you can very well compare the other services in Azure or Google Cloud, by referring to some comparison sheet, right? So similarly, once you are thorough with the basic services that are related to data engineer, so you should be fine, right? And there are like multiple other topics that were discussed, like like a generic questions. How do you answer some common questions that are asked in the interviews, usually by the project manager or HR person or any other senior person in the team. So a bit of technical and also non-technical. So that's the intent of it. So this section is around ETL concept itself. See, right now the Python and the Azure is not covered in the course, which I am adding. I will be adding in the Python and PySpark related content very soon, and you will see that price increase as soon as I add my Python and PySpark related videos. But apart from that, on ETL concepts and talent altogether is around 40 hours. And when it comes to a database, you have like 10 to 15 hours of data lake, data mart, SQL, and hands-on real-time projects, and about 4 to 5 hours of administration on various tools. And then the documentation is around again, there are like several, at least 20 30 documentation, resume guide, resume templates, study guides, and SQL scripts. There's all whole lot of documentation involved in this entire project, so you can check it out. And then on the interview FAQ is another 10 hours of content to prepare well on different areas of you know different areas basically, right? So altogether is going to be around 75 hours of content through which you can learn. And of course you will have a ton of new topics and ton of new sections that you will be able to getting the exposure. And in future I'll also be adding some of the Linux scripting and the basic Power BI or Excel. So this course is going to be a live course, wherein I'll be adding more contents in the future. So don't think that once you purchase it's like a lifetime. So I'll be adding more and more content, and so that way you will um, get exposure and also learn and then upskill and get your dream job on data engineering. I hope this was really helpful. If you have any questions, you can ping me, or you can add your comments. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up and help me and encourage me to do more videos and help you all guys. All my intention throughout these years is to share my knowledge and help you guys to succeed in life. That's the primary goal of my all these initiatives and knowledge sharing. I love to share my knowledge. I always want to see people succeed and not stuck in an situation where there is no job, or ending up a job in a non-IT field where you work like 12 hours, 13 hours, but still you're underpaid, right? So especially data engineering on if I were to tell you, there's very high demand of data engineers, so you should be considering having this course and learn through it and succeed in life. All right, guys, thank you. Happy learning.